about the level of, we were talking about the different levels of the idea of Gan Eden. We were talking about how the neshamas are rising in Gan Eden and going higher and higher in level, below incomparable to the way and where they were in their higher levels of the previous in the different levels that they are in. And we said that's the meaning of the pasuk that the holy ones, that's referring to the malachim, are the ones that will praise you every single day, but praise is going on the elevation, on the ascent. And Selah is on a level that is everlasting. So in other words, the praises and the arising of the neshamas higher and higher, that is something that is everlasting. And that is something that is beyond and above any types of limitations. The level of B'chol Ma'odcha. Ma'odcha meaning believable. So now he's going to go into explaining, this is all in Gan Eden in general. Now he's going to go into explaining the specifics of the two levels of Gan Eden. So again, we're holding page Ches, line 4. These ascents, these elevations are divided into two general types. Gan Eden Atachten, the lower Gan Eden, Gan Eden Elyon, and the higher level of Gan Eden. The ascent in from one level to another level, in the specific levels of Gan Eden, and even more in general. The ascent from the lower Gan Eden to the higher Gan Eden. It is through the pillar. There says there's a pillar between the lower Gan Eden and the upper Gan Eden, and through that pillar, that is the means how they rise up from the lower Gan Eden to the higher Gan Eden. And so too, through the idea of the river of fire, that in that river of fire, the neshamas are immerse themselves. They go to a mikveh in the river of fire. By deism is batlim, through that they become nullified. Like was explained previously, that immersion in the mikveh, the word tevilah, the same letters like the word habit, matzir shalahem, that they lose and they totally leave behind their previous form. That's the idea of the tevilah. Similar to the immersion that it says that the neshamas also have to immerse in the river of fire between leaving Gehenna to go up to Gan Eden, the lower Gan Eden. Why is that necessary? So there's an expression, the high alma, the Zohar is brought down, so they should forget the image of this world. In other words, the perspective of this world, the view of this world, etc., is something that interferes and gets in the way of the neshama's appreciation of Gan Eden. So by immersing in this river of fire, that eradicates its previous appreciation, understanding of the physical world, and therefore it's open to the spiritual experience of Gan Eden. Saying the im loikein, if you would not have this forgetting of the image and the vision of this world by immersing in this river of fire, so then it is something that disturbs and interferes with his approach, with his appreciation of Gan Eden. He cannot receive and accept the matters of the lower Gan Eden. Valder, if the tzarich is bitlatz here, the Gan Eden Atachn in a similar vein has to be the nullifying of the form of the lower Gan Eden. Kadesh Yucholis Alas Lakabos Atzir Gan Eden Elyon, so I shall be able to ascend and receive the form of Gan Eden Elyon. Just like there has to be the immersion in the river of fire to completely remove any vision and appreciation of this world before it could appreciate Gan Eden, so too Gan Eden Atachn and Gan Eden Elyon is so different that before appreciating and being able to truly receive the revelations of the higher Gan Eden, one needs to also immerse in this river of fire to remove any type of approach of the lower Gan Eden. And in many places in Chassidus, it's explained that you could have different types of approaches to things that if we don't completely remove that previous approach, it could disturb and disrupt the next level. So, for example, it says that there was a certain Amoira that had to fast many fasts to forget the style. Exactly, that had to forget the style of learning of Talmud Bavli before he could study Talmud Yerushalmi. It wasn't just learning something more. It was a totally different type of study. Since it was a totally different type of study, that's why to be able to transition from Talmud Bavli to Talmud Yerushalmi, he needed to completely get that out of his mind. I remember we had a teacher in high school that also said, forget everything you learned about such and such and such. We're starting from scratch in this thing because the way we learned it previously would have been a disruption, would have been a disturbance for the way he would be teaching. Okay, let's go on to Ois Dalet. It says, bottom of page Ches, line 20. We first have to preface the difference between the two types of Gan Eden. Eden Atachn Gan Eden Elyon, the lower Gan Eden and the higher Gan Eden. Be understood according to what's brought down in the part of the Zohar that's called the Idra Zuta. The Eden Ilah ubechinas moicha chachmas dema. The supernal level of Eden, the higher level of Eden, that is the moicha, meaning chachma, the way it's concealed. Often that usually the concealed level of chachma has to do with chachma, the way it's in Arach Ampin, the lower level in Keser. But Proteus, and more specifically, the Rebbe says, Nikras kein gam chachma ilah. Even the high level of chachma, which usually goes on chachma d'atzilus, not chachma of Keser, is also called this level of moyach stima, this level of Eden ilah. The Eden Tato, Bechinas Chachma, the Zeir Ampin, and the lower Eden is the Chachma, the way it's already part of the Midos of Zeir Ampin. So, what's the idea behind this? What's the difference between these two levels of Eden? So, first we have to distinguish and determine what is the meaning of Eden. Hine Avsha Eden Meloshin Idun in Yonetainu, top of page test. Even though the word Eden from the expression Idunim means delight and enjoyment. So what does that have to do with different levels of Chachma? Talking about the Eden Elah is Chachma Stimar, Chachma Elah, Eden Tata is either Chachma of Zeir Anpin. What does Eden, what does Tainug have to do with Chachma? It says, primary revelation of the light is in Chachma. Though the light itself is located much higher than Chachma, the level of the light, the level of Tainug, is in the higher level of Keser, known as Atik, Pnimius HaKeser, the inner level of Keser, which is Atik, that's the level of the light. But over there, that's only the source of it, that's only the way it's in its basic state. To be able to come out revealed, that the revelation of that is only in Chachma itself. Like the metaphor for this and the example of this down here by a person below. When it's drawn down by him, becomes revealed by him a new idea. That's the idea of Chachma. Chachma is the place where it's the beginning of the revelation of Seichel. So then the person becomes filled with the light. That's why it says also that the face of a certain Amoira lit up when he found a new Braisa, because a new revelation of Chachma, a new revelation of intellect, is a channel and a vehicle for the delight, for the time to become revealed. Yet, that is all the beginning. We started off by saying that there's Eden Ilah and Eden Tata. The higher Eden is the Chachma itself, whether it's Chachma Stima, Chachma Ilah. The lower Eden is the Chachma of Zeir Ampi. That is the delight itself. But then there's the way the light expands now, or the way the Chachma expands. That's a further step in this process. Amnam, line 6, Avshas calls Gilead Tainug b'Chachma, though the beginning of the revelation of the delight is in the level of Chachma, Nekudas HaSeichel, the point of the idea, the expansion and the spreading out of the delight, that the delight takes full form and a complete type of broadness to it, it's specifically in Bina. That is why there's the statement that's brought down many times of Chassidus, as it's known from Zohar. The Zohar says she's Galus Atiku Bebina. The revelation of Atik, the level of Tainug, like we said before, where does it become revealed? In Bina. It says, Hainu Kasha, Seichel Nimshach Mispashit Ba'irach V'Roichav Chulu. Only when the Seichel, the idea, which in Chachma it was only a point, but now it expands in length and breadth, etc. In other words, in a state of Bina. So then you have the true expansion of the delight as well. So does that mean that Chachma doesn't have the delight in a good way? So he says, no, each one has its own advantage. Since the Chachma is an essential point. Nikuda Balvat, on the one hand, it's only a point. It's not like Bina that it's expanded and has length and breadth and depth, etc. Only a point. But on the other hand, it's a core point. Aval Nikuda Atzmis, it comes to the essence and talks to the essence and relates to the essence. Shalah Seichel of the idea. So also the revelation of the delight associated with Chachma takes on the same form like Chachma. Just like Chachma is a Nekuda Atzmi, a point of the essence, the same thing, the delight is, on the one hand, it's just a point of delight, but it's a core and essential one. As opposed to by Bina, that in Bina, everything comes out in a way of broadness. Both the idea is broad and developed, and also the delight that comes from understanding and appreciating this concept is also in a very broad manner. Yet, in that broadness and in that expansiveness, it does lose that essential core nature. But it doesn't have the essence the way it's in Chachma. So, be that as it may, what do you have when Chachma comes down to Bina? The delight that was only in a way of a point, so now Bina expands. Azayin nasa is galus v'spashtus hatainu. That becomes the revelation and the expansion of the delight. So, up till now, we identified the difference in Chachma and Bina. Based on this difference in Chachma and Bina, and we have associated Eden itself with the level of Chachma. So the Gan Eden is already the way Chachma, the way the Eden comes already out into a garden, already expands, it's coming into Bina. Let's see it inside. Line 17. B'zel in Gan Eden. Hainu amshachas ataynu the chachma Eden bebina gan. It's the drawing down of this tainuk of chachma, the delight of chachma, which is in the core point state of Eden. It draws it down into bina, which is the level of the garden. Like it says, how do we know that the garden and Eden is two separate things? It says that he planted the gan be'Eden mikedem. He planted, he placed the garden in Eden from the east. So we see that gan and Eden are two separate things. Using more Kabbalah terminology, Shazel Inyan Yichud Chachma Binam. This is known as the union of the two spheres of Chachma Bina. Gan Eden is when the Eden, which is Chachma, comes down to Gan, which is Bina. And you have the delight, the way it's manifest in Chachma, in a point, expands into Bina. So now we're getting back to what we started we spoke about in Ois Gimel. Then the tzaddikim are sitting and deriving pleasure. In a way that it's an internalized type of light. It's in such a type of way that it permeates the person. That's why this explains, I believe, that it says yoishvin. What's the expression? Just say tzaddikim nan miziv ashkina. What's the word yoishvin? Yoishvin, sitting, means also from the word is yashvus. It's settled in. It's something that comes down according to the level of the person. So the tzaddikim that are sitting in Gan Eden and deriving pleasure from the Shekhinah, that is because the Chachma comes down into Bina. So therefore, since the delight that's in Chachma is now expanded into Bina, the tzaddikim can internalize it and take this in with a full broadness, because the light becomes now broadened, as we said in Bina. Line 22. Once we've determined that this is the general idea of Gan Eden, Chachma uniting with Bina, so we can be able to internalize and broaden the enjoyment. So now we could also distinguish the differences between Gan Eden Ha'elyon and Gan Eden Ha'tachton. This itself, there is the higher and the lower Gan Eden. Gan Eden Ha'elyon the higher Gan Eden, that's what comes down from the higher Eden, which we said is either Chachma Stimar or Chachma Ilar, that comes down to Min. The Gan Eden Ha'tachton, Eden Ta'tach. Yes, Chachma the Zeir Anpin, the lower Gan Eden is what comes from the lower level of Eden. We said the lower level of Eden is the Chachma that's in the middle. Gilu Yataynu Gaba Zeir Anpin, that means the revelation of the delight of Hashem via Chachma into the middle, top of page Yud, the Bchinas Bina the Zeir Anpin, in the level of Bina, the way it's in Zeir Anpin, because we said Gan Eden is the yichud of Chachma and Bina. But since Eden, the lower Eden, Gan Eden Ha'tachton, is talking about the Chachma, the way it's in Zod, the way the Chachma, the way it's in the Midas. So therefore, it's the union of Chachma and Bina, the way it's part of Midas. But it doesn't just stay Chachma and Bina in the Midas, it goes through the entire Midas, until it reaches the level of Malchus. So again, the higher Gan Eden is Chachma and Bina's joining. Lower Gan Eden is Chachma joining with the entire Zeir Anpin till it reaches down to Malchus. Line 3 on page Yud. Line 2. In addition to what we just now said, that Gan Eden Ha'tachton is the drawing down of the Chachma that's in Zeir Anpin, throughout Zeir Anpin. In a Gan Eden Ha'tachton nimshach min izgal ha'orim k'nas Eden Allah k'mevur ba'rucha v'makmaker. It's not just limited to having the revelation of the lower Eden, of the Chachma of Zeir Anpin, but really, even in Gan Eden Ha'tachton, there is also a revelation of the higher Eden, of the Chachma Ilah, Chachma Stima, and so on, as it's explained in a different place. End of line 4, Nimtza comes out, Gan Eden At the two levels of the higher Gan Eden and the lower Gan Eden, in Bechlolos, they have chinas the bino malchus. These are in general the two levels of bina and malchus. That in bina and in malchus comes down respectively. In the higher Gan Eden comes down chachma, and in the lower Gan Eden and malchus comes down the level of midas of Zeir Anpin. And Kabbalah terminologies, what is, shines in the higher Gan Eden, that's the union of Yudke. What shines in the lower Gan Eden, that's the Yichud of Vavke. Because Vavke, Yudke is Chachma Bina, Vavke is Midas and Malchus. B'chlolus ha'in in the Gan Eden, it's Vasif, oid yoyser idea avoidas ha'adam b'kiyum ha'torah mitzvahs. The general idea of Gan Eden, it's added through a person's service in the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs. Like it says in the pasuk by Necheu Gan Eden loved all Shamra, that he placed he placed the Yid in Gan Eden, he placed Adam Arish in Gan Eden to serve and to guard. And we know the service is referring to Chazal say Zem mitzvahs asay, la'avda Zem mitzvahs asay, l'shamra zeis mitzvahs lois asay. In addition to what comes down into the Gan, which is either Bina or Malchus, and it comes down to it from the level of Chachma, what comes down initially without the person's input, without the person's avoidam, is only the external part of Chachma. Is added to this also the Amshachim from the inner level of Chachma. Like for example, by a person down here below, the point of the idea, the level of Chachma, that's only the external part of Chachma. So there is first the point, there is first the initial idea, there's first what's the Barak HaMavrik, the original flash of an idea that goes up and that goes off in his mind. That is only Chitzonius HaChachma, as we'll soon explain what is the Pnimius HaChachma. After this external part of Chachma, that original flash, that Barak HaMavrik comes down, and it's broadened in the Asaga of Bina, in the comprehension of Bina. And he doesn't just stop with that. He says, okay, I understand. That's enough. No, he continues. And he adds, and he puts in more effort and to go into this idea even more so. Then the person reaches to the innermost level of Chachma. Then he reaches the level of the sight of Chachma. Then he reaches that the idea becomes by him so verified, so true, so real, as if he would see it. He sees it in his mind's eye. In other words, Chassidus in general explains there's two levels of Chachma. There's the basic level of Chachma that we learn right away at the beginning of Tanya, in Perek Gimel and Tanya, where we talk about Chachma Bina Das, and we talk about the Midas. That says, you know what the Chachma is? The Chachma is the level of Nekudas HaSeichel, Barak HaMavrik, that initial flash. But later on, we see, both in Tanya and in other Amarim, that there's a deeper idea of Chachma. That is when a person sees something in their mind's eye. When do they see something in their mind's eye? They see something in their mind's eye after the Nekudas HaChachma was brought down into Bina. And he really toils in it and really connects with it as if he sees it. Then that is a higher level, the inner level of Chachma, not the external level of Chachma of just the point and the Barak HaMavrik, etc., etc. So now going back to what we were talking about the lower Gan Eden and the higher Gan Eden. In other words, so the Rebbe is saying, just like there's a difference between Chokhmah, the way it comes down initially at the bin, versus the greater level of Chokhmah that comes about through our Yigiyah, through our toil, that then we reach the inner part of Chokhmah, we reach the level of vision of Chokhmah. In a similar manner, we have the type of level of elevation that occurs when we do Torah mitzvahs. There is the Gan Eden on its own, and the level of Chokhmah on its own that comes down to Bina, the Yichud Chokhmah Bina. And then there's what we add to Gan Eden, a deeper level of Chokhmah, pneumius level of Chokhmah, through La'avdal Shamra, through our avodah of Torah mitzvahs, we add to Gan Eden a much higher level. That is talking about Gan Eden, Elyon, Chokhmah, and Bina. The Rebbe goes on line 22, similar to this also concerning the lower level of Gan Eden. Malchus is the idea of the drawing down all the way to the level of Sfiras HaMalchus, Yichud Vavke. The union of the letters of Vavke, as we mentioned before, that Yichud Yudke, that's Gan Eden Elyon, and Yichud Vavke, Midas and Malchus, that's Gan Eden Atach. So that there's the Yichud Vavke as it is before the person does it. And there's the Yichud of Vavke that is added to it, and it's a deeper type of union and a higher type of level when you have the avodah of Torah mitzvahs, L'avdal Shamra, line 24, Shenimshach Bogam, Ha'ofen Hayoser Naila Shebeinen Havana V'Asagim, that now it comes down when a person does their avodah, so then they draw down into the Vavke, into the Midas and Malchus, so there they get a higher level of Bina coming down into the Midas and Malchus instead of the ordinary and external level of Bina that would normally come down into Midas and Malchus. So the main point is there's the Gan Eden, the union of Yudke and Vavke, Gan Eden Elyon, Gan Eden Atachten, prior to our avodah, and there's the greater and more intense and higher level that we add and increase in Gan Eden through our avodah of Torah mitzvah. Any questions?
So is this like seems like a two-stage rocket, so to speak? So we get an idea and then we start learning and learning and learning, and then we get another piece of chachma, and then
it's
start expanding on that.
It's a deeper effect on us. It permeates us deeper. That higher level of chachma is something that we now start to completely identify with. That is a much different type of effect on us, a much different type of approach and connection with the idea that it's no more just an idea, a subject, a topic, but now becomes something real. Like he says, it's a samtus, that the thing is really becomes totally identified with it.
It becomes like Das at that point.
You could say it's a level of das, but in some ways this is even higher than the das. It's there's a certain similarity. I hear the similarity that you're mentioning, but this is even higher.
So right, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, no. So we said a lot of information. Can you give us like at least an overview? Where are we going with all of this? I'm getting lost with where we started and where
we are trying to explain the aliyahs of the neshamas in Gan Eden, and to explain those aliyahs of the neshamas in Gan Eden. So we were speaking about what the Gan is, what the Eden is, what the connection is, and what we accomplish to be able to reach those types of aliyahs.
But these types of understandings and all that, it's applicable to us right now. It doesn't have to happen in Gan Eden, or we're just talking about by Gan Eden. I mean, when I relate to an idea, I can relate to it like in different ways.
Yeah, but we're talking about the special revelations of that are only the neshamas can perceive because we're too limited to be able to get it.
What, in the Zeramton, it talks about midos. It doesn't seem like you have midos with the capability to affect them in Gan Eden, because that requires a goof.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Do people have midos that they can change in Gan Eden once they left their
No,
Your
no,
body.
this is just talking about the result of what I did down here. That's what affects Gan Eden.
So it's static once it gets there.
Right. Okay, we'll stop over here.